Week 3 of the NFL season is approaching quickly as we have a lot of teams that are surprising, whether that is the Kansas City Chiefs starting 0-2, the Arizona Cardinals being 2-0, Joe Burrow's massive injury that could keep him out 3 months. The fantasy football landscape is changing every single week, and that's why the waiver wire is the best place to improve your team. Whether you are 2-0, 1-1, or 0-2, the waiver wire provides a place where you can go add a weekly starter, maybe a guy with high upside towards the end of the season, and completely change the course of your fantasy season. So let's get into the best waiver wire pickups here ahead of week 3 in fantasy football. What's going on, everybody? My name is Blitz Lincoln. We are talking week 3 waiver wire targets, whether or not you're going to stash them, whether or not you can plug and play in your lineups. This week 3 waiver wire guide will provide you with the best case scenario for your team to help you go out and improve heading into week 3. We're going to start with my overall grade of this group. I don't think it's a necessarily super strong one, considering the fact the running back position isn't very deep for this waiver wire class. So if you're looking for a running back this week, might not be the best week for you. But if you're looking for wide receivers, maybe even a quarterback or a tight end, this waiver wire list is not too shabby to be able to capitalize on some of these guys available. We're going to start in New York with Wandell Robinson, who is starting to look like a completely different player over the first 2 weeks of the season. And the biggest difference for me isn't necessarily the target share. The target share was fine last year. He's been the clear wide receiver 2 for the New York Giants for 2 straight years, but he has a 23% target share, and his yards per target were 16.9 last week against the Cowboys. And last season, we saw Wandell Robinson finish with crazy stat lines of 9 catches for 40 yards, not necessarily putting up gaudy numbers, but in PPR formats, that worked. Imagine if Wandell Robinson turned those 9 catches into 80 yards. That makes a significant difference. And he did that this past week against the Cowboys. He had 8 catches, 142 yards, and a touchdown, and was beating the Cowboys over the top in this past game. It's a great sign that he is starting to develop his route tree as a receiver. He's always been pretty solid underneath and in the slot. If he is able to push a defense vertically, him and Malik Neighbors could be forming a very strong duo in New York. And, Russell Wilson actually looked very good, like I mentioned before this video. He ranks top 10 among all receivers in fantasy points per game. I know it's been 2 weeks, but he is a player that you can play in your flex and not be like, oh man, I'm absolutely screwed this week. Wandell Robinson has viability in PPR formats. The matchup in week 3 against Kansas City is tough. We saw what they did to the Eagles offense this past week. We know the Chargers had success against them, but partly due to the Chiefs expecting them to run. Secondary was completely unprepared. I think the Chiefs will be prepared for the Giants, who just threw 400 yards against the Cowboys. They're going to be like, okay, this Giants team can play. I think Kansas City is a tough matchup for a lot of slot receivers this year, with McDuffie bouncing more in the inside. So, interestingly enough, I think Wandell Robinson is a plug and play the rest of the year, whether or not you have injuries, whether or not you have bye weeks coming up. Wandell Robinson's a player that you can keep as a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, and not feel like your week is completely shot, because he does have that, PPR floor with also the high upside potential of him running more routes down the field, which is exciting. Let's get into the first running back on this list, Bhayshul Tuten. And if you're in Yahoo leagues, he's slightly owned at over 50%. But if you're in ESPN, he is under that 50% threshold to make this list. So he deserves a mention. The Jaguars traded Tank Bigsby, and it wasn't like Travis Etienne took on a more significant role. He went from 61% of snaps to 66% of snaps this week. The biggest beneficiary of the trade was Bhayshul Tuten. He turned 18 snaps into 10 touches for 74 total yards and a touchdown. He was both effective in the run and the passing game, played a majority of early downs, not much on third down. Rookie LaQuint Allen is also seeing a lot of third down snaps, but one thing is clear to me is that Liam Cohen can scheme up running backs better than a majority of NFL coaches from what I've watched. Travis Etienne is having a resurgent year here for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Bashal Tuten, in the first time we see him in actual action, averages 7.4 yards per touch, which is great from a rookie perspective. I'm not necessarily sure we see more than a 35% snap share, 40% snap share for the first few weeks of this season, but I think he is a high upside player. And let's say that Travis Etienne misses out anytime this year, he automatically could step in and have a massive role in this offense. We went from viewing Travis Etienne as a round 8, round 9 type of pick, and now we view him as a high-end RB2 with his usage so far to start the season in Jacksonville. If Bhayshul Tuten can step into that role or even eat into that role, he should be stashed on every single bench for now, and let's see what happens, especially with Travis Etienne having a few injuries throughout his past. So Bhayshul Tuten, incredibly talented player. Stash him on the bench. Isn't necessarily a plug and play in your lineup guy, but the upside is there for him to have a massive role down the season if everything bounces his way. Alec Ao Manor is a player that I've talked about for quite some time now. He's only rostered in 8% of leagues, but he's slowly starting to get on more and more people's radars. And then this week, he makes two highlight catches. One was partly because Cam Ward just had a crazy play, but had a crazy one-handed catch on the sideline, finished with 4 catches for 56 yards, and he finished with a 25% target share, and he accounted for nearly half of the Titans' air yards this week. So all that stuff is bouncing together to suggest that Ao Manor has completely taken over as the wide receiver 2 here for the Tennessee Titans already in week 2, which is great. They have veteran receivers in Tyler Lockett, Von Jefferson, that he has taken over their role. Calvin Ridley is going to be the alpha, but Ao Manor could be a strong wide receiver 2 in a team that seems like they're going to be trailing in a majority of their games this season. I want to bank on a rookie to rookie connection long term, and I'll bank on Ao Manor and Cam Ward's connection here in 2025. So I think he's a guy you need to have in your on your bench. I don't know if he's as startable as a guy like Wandell Robinson, but I think depending on the matchup, he could be a plug and play type player the rest of the year. Troy Franklin is the next one here. 3% rostered, and he's basically what I thought Marvin Mims was going to be. In the preseason, Marvin Mims played as many snaps as Courtland Sutton, but now it's Troy Franklin that basically has evolved into that role. He played 83% of snaps. He had more snaps than Courtland Sutton. He finished with 8 catches, 89 yards, and a touchdown, and he also had an 11-yard rush to add to that. His per route efficiencies has been good, and he's had over 2 yards per route run through 2 weeks. Everything is suggesting that Troy Franklin is breaking out within this Denver Broncos offense. Now, Sean Payton typically goes on and off with Troy Franklin in his past, but nothing is telling me that this is not a bad waiver option here. The Broncos are going to have to throw to somebody else besides Courtland Sutton. Evan Ingram's not the tight end I think many were expecting him to be in Denver. So Troy Franklin has clearly taken over as a must-add option for the Denver Broncos, and he should be a solid wide receiver 4 going forward. If he continues this usage and production, he is going to slot into a weekly start, and he is going to be the most popular waiver wire pickup of this week. Let's get into the quarterback position here. Danny Jones. And, Indiana Jones, Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes, whatever you want to call him, he is an absolute dog right now to open up the season. 588 passing yards to open the year. He has 3 rushing touchdowns during that stretch. He's averaging 26 fantasy points per game. And once again, he's a top 12 quarterback on a weekly basis. And he played Denver this week and still had a crazy game, suggesting that the breakout's legit. And Shane Steichen, I think, is one of the more underrated offensive coaches in the NFL with what he's been able to do with his quarterbacks over the past few years. I think taking a team with Gardner Minshew to the playoffs. Joe Flacco's had some success within that system. Obviously, Anthony Richardson's a different case scenario. But Daniel Jones immediately steps in and looks like a top 12 quarterback in the NFL just because he's very efficient. The passing game is actually working within schedule because they're completing passes. And this is a Colts team that has a lot of talent. I mean, Jonathan Taylor has been crazy to start the season. You had Tyler Warren in an offense with Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, pretty strong offensive line. And this is what you're getting. Miami's defense, okay, that's one thing. But to do it against this Broncos defense, the breakout is legit. Daniel Jones should be much better than he was in New York. And I think he is worth rostering. He's not rushing for a ton of yards, but the rushing touchdowns are nice. The passing touchdowns will increase, and he's a guy you just have to have on your roster now, and only 17%. I think I would rather pick up a guy like Daniel Jones instead of go target a guy like Jake Browning if I'm a Joe Burrow owner, just because I think Daniel Jones is a better quarterback right now, and the fit's going to be a little bit better for him long term. Jeremy McNichols deserves a mention on this list, and yes, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is everybody's favorite. He's going to be talked about the most in this backfield, but he's not going to play much on third downs. That role is going to go to Jeremy McNichols, as it did against the Packers when Austin Ekeler went down. McNichols automatically slots into that third down role, and we've seen Ekeler have viable fantasy performances. No, he's not an RB2. He's barely an RB3, but in PPR formats, the dump downs from Jaden Daniels are very interesting, and McNichols could eventually format himself into a PPR flex. Now, if Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt starts playing more on third down, I think that he automatically is an RB2 the rest of the season. But I'm not sure I see that happening, especially since he's a rookie and they've slowly been easing him into his role. He hadn't played anything on third downs to open the season. So I think it'll be a veteran like Jeremy McNichols that takes the Austin Ekeler role in this offense going forward. Juwan Johnson is the next player here, tight end for the New Orleans Saints, absolute superstar, breaking out at the crazy point of his career. He's racked up 20 targets now through 2 games, which is more than any tight end in the league. He's also had some good red zone usage as well. Spencer Rattler's targeted him 7 times in his last 5 games. It's not a 1 week breakout where we're like, okay, like sure, Juwan Johnson was the tight end one in week 1, but no, like 2 straight weeks he had 4 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown this week. It's a breakout that is going to continue to happen. If you can get him on your waivers right now and you have a tight end needy situation, go and target Juwan Johnson at all costs because the Saints offense is going to have a ton of volume. Kellen Moore actually has his team competing on a weekly basis, which is great. And he has Spencer Rattler looking like a competent quarterback. So it's very encouraging to me that this Saints passing attack can be decent enough to make Juwan Johnson a very consistent, reliable fantasy option at the tight end position going forward. And if there's a guy like that on waivers, you got to have him in your lineup. Kayshon Boots, the next guy here. Yes, he had a down week. I know he was second in receiving yards behind Jamar Chase heading into the week in his last 4 games, but 1 catch, 16 yards, and a touchdown. Wasn't an absolute bust, but Drake May spread the ball around. It was an efficient day for that New England Patriots offense. And I think that the trust factor of Boot is just a little bit higher than, some of the newer guys like Stephon Diggs, Mac Hollins in this offense. And Drake May going forward, I don't think the spreading in the ball is going to happen as much against teams that are going to lock in on Diggs, lock in on Hunter Henry, lock in on Demario Douglas. Notice where Travion Henderson is lined up when he's on the field. Kayshon Boots just kind of like a guy that's out there and they're trying to figure out what we can do with him and move him around. And teams aren't necessarily going to be locking in him in as much. In week 3, they get the Steelers, who have allowed back-to-back 90-yard games to opposing wideouts. One of these Patriots receivers are going to go off, and I think it is Kayshon that is going to cash in on that matchup. Can't be a waivers list without mentioning Harold Fannin this year, it feels like. His playing time did see a little bit of a dip. He did finish with 5 catches for 48 yards, but the Browns continue to roll out 2 tight end sets with David Njoku and Harold Fannin because they believe that those two give them the best chance of having the best pass catchers on the field. Fannin has played a ton in the slot, which is very encouraging for him, but it feels like there's a ceiling to what he can do. If he is more of a stash because of the fact that he is splitting time with Njoku, 11 personnel. He's not out on the field there a ton. But if Njoku gets traded mid-season, which the Browns are already struggling this year at 0-2, Njoku is on a 1-year contract, Harold Fannin automatically becomes a top 8 tight end on a weekly basis because he gets all those snaps heading to him and the targets that Njoku still has. He is a long-term stash with legit league-winning upside if you need a tight end long-term. So I think Fannin, got to have him, got to stash him. Seahawks defense is one that we have to mention. They are going up against a favorable matchup here with the New Orleans Saints. The Saints are still a great streaming option. I know I just glazed them a little bit about how good they've been under Kellen Moore, but Spencer Rattler has a history, and they still are losing games. So I'm going to bet on the fact that the New Orleans Saints not talented enough. The Seahawks defense has played really good against the 49ers and the Steelers, so I am starting them in a plus matchup against the New Orleans Saints. Some honorable mentions here. Geno Smith for the Raiders. He plays against the Chargers tonight, so we'll see what happens there. But running backs, Tyler Allgeier, Kenneth Gainwell, Blake Corum, Kyle Monangai, Tyjae Spears. I think, Monangai here for the Bears played a significant amount more snaps. Roschon Johnson was a healthy scratch, basically, for this upcoming game. Tyler Allgeier, if Bijan Robinson goes down, he's automatically an RB1 going forward. So 2 guys you want to take a look at there. As far as wide receivers go, Romeo Doubs had a pretty consistent role through 2 weeks. Not a bad waiver pickup there. Then Jalen Coker, the stash you want. Hunter Renfrow, 2 touchdowns this week. So take a look at that slot option in Carolina. Could be a viable player long-term. Another Carolina player, Jatavian Sanders, had a solid game this week. Definitely a tight end to look at, but I think there's better options going forward. As far as defensive streamers, Atlanta Falcons, Indianapolis Colts, 2 units that I really like this week based on their matchup. Droppable players, Austin Ekeler, unfortunately. Caleb Johnson has seen 4 snaps in 2 weeks. You can get him off your roster. Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin took over that role. Rashod Bateman's done absolutely nothing, and it seems like DeAndre Hopkins is going to have a bigger role than expected for the Baltimore Ravens. Then Trevor Lawrence is just wildly inconsistent, didn't cash in on 2+ matchups, so why should I start him going forward? Colston Loveland is not playing a significant amount of snaps, so I'm dropping all those guys. As far as guys I'm not necessarily panicking on, Jerome Ford, Josh Downs, Darnell Mooney, Braylon Allen, Evan Ingram, Hunter Henry. There's one more week before I'm dropping those guys, so hold on to them. All in all, though, drop any sort of waiver questions you have down in the comment section below, and make sure you hit that subscribe button for more Blitz fantasy football content. I will catch you guys next time.